Hey guys, I need to rant. Does that work for you? Because I am close to tearing out my hair over all this censorship in the name of modern sensibilities. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai-chan here. Honestly, I'm outraged. I take a couple of weeks to focus on Tsukihime and Melty Blood, only to notice a boatload of articles and hot takes censoring anime. Or, quite bluntly, all the things I happen to enjoy. I'm a simple otaku who absolutely adores character designs like Velvet from Berseria, Alyssa from God Eater, and Matoi Ryuko from Kill la Kill. All I want to do is defend and encourage more of these bold design choices, as they represent what I most love about anime. An unashamed adherence to the rule of cool, and by extension, the rules of cute, beautiful, or in this case, sexy. Normally, I'd hold my tongue, but these kinds of things are genuinely being threatened by Western or woke culture for all the wrong reasons. I watched as Anita Sarkeesian slandered the entire gaming industry, and believed as Jim Sterling told us that nobody was here to take away our dead or alive volleyball games, humoring the common phrase that it's okay to criticize the problematic elements in media we enjoy. The result? An industry where companies are either too scared or too lost in their echo chambers to embrace the creative freedom we once had. Pillars of fan service, such as Senran Kagura, have essentially been cancelled or reduced to an empty husk of their former glory. I mention Senran Kagura because it served as a standard, holding the outer boundary of what creators could get away with, and without it, we've seen all sorts of creators, even in Japan, suppressing their awesome ideas so as not to offend anyone able to throw a social media tantrum. I've got a number of recent examples, but let's start with the most egregious, Project Eve. Last month, Sony held a PlayStation showcase, revealing a number of titles in development for the PS5. Given Sony's more puritanical company policies of late, I had absolutely no interest in what they had to show. That is, until I locked eyes on Project Eve, a Korean-developed action game where you play as an attractive woman beating the crap out of freaky aliens. That shit's right up my alley, a breath of fresh air in an otherwise stale marketplace. Of course, for the very same reasons I'm excited, different games journalists and parasitic vermin hives like Reset Era are throwing complaints. It's your usual objectification argument, calling out the male gaze present in the game's presentation. God forbid you make your game's characters pretty enough that you actually enjoy looking at them. Korean MMOs are amazing when it comes to graphics, and it seems like Reset Era finds that a bad thing. Of course, this is also the same community that hears about Sora being added to Smash and first thinks the game isn't diverse enough despite having obese alligators and sentient plants. Personally, I wanted Shantae in the game, but I can guarantee you they'd complain about her for being attractive. More annoying, however, was Digital Foundry, whose staff stated in a video covering the showcase that Project Eve's protagonist had an unflattering design from a bygone era that doesn't appeal to modern sensibilities. Mind you, they don't have to like the game, but I find it insulting how they try to speak for an entire demographic as harbingers of modernity. Their rhetoric is perpetuating a fallacy that ultimately harms our creative freedom. For one, you've gotta be viewing the world through a muddy fishbowl to think she doesn't look amazing. This white knight from Digital Foundry has no idea what he's talking about. She doesn't have exaggerated proportions. She just has an idealized figure that many people, both men and women, fantasize about. Again, it follows the rule of cool, and I can only hope the devs follow through with it while ignoring Digital Foundry's nonsense. On that note, I have to comment on the whole bygone era thing and how insanely misguided it is. To assume that modern culture despises designs from the early 2000s and earlier is verifiably false. It's often that bold sexiness that made such works classics. For instance, I just backed a Kickstarter campaign to release North American Blu-rays for the iconic 80s anime Dirty Pair. Considering it's now plowing through its stretch goals, I think it's safe to say that Kei and Yuri are beloved icons, kicking ass across the universe in skimpy outfits. I can guarantee you it's not just horny dudes funding this either. There is no such rule that says a woman can't be well-respected and visibly gorgeous at the same time. That's just a remaster, though. Woke America shows time and time again how valuable nostalgic properties are. A massive amount of new, modern works are adaptations, remakes, reboots, or sequels to bygone properties. There's an irony to it all, though, since many of these modern takes try to revise or fix what woke creators think was problematic about the originals, and they fail precisely because of these so-called modern sensibilities. Mind you, this isn't to say that properties like Star Wars or Ghostbusters are being ruined because they have diverse characters. Rather, they suffer because creators prioritize this diversity over actually making a solid product. It's a matter of attitude, really. They didn't set out to make something fun or exciting. They set out to make a statement, one that isn't as morally righteous as they think it is. I say it all the time in my videos, but as it stands, there are no good arguments against the sexualization of anime characters that justifies banning or censoring them. Things like objectification and male gaze theory all hinge upon the Anita Sarkeesian logic that media doesn't exist in a vacuum. It assumes that media that voyeuristically glorifies the female form or represents women in a politically incorrect light is normalizing dangerous societal assumptions and teaching people, especially children, to disrespect women in real life. Even if you could objectively prove this were true, it still doesn't justify censorship because it's blaming the media itself for people's inability to separate fantasy from reality. It also presumes the worst in things that are otherwise wholesome. Sexy anime women are as awesome to me as the giant swords they wield against ferocious monsters and such. That kind of imagery empowers me, and I think more highly of those female characters than I do of any male role models. It's how I would embrace femininity, just as this Daichan avatar does. Even if there are real women who look at this stuff and find it offensive, doesn't mean you own everyone's concept of a woman. Maybe some people only appreciate character designs they can fap to, but that doesn't mean they're demanding you to live up to those fantasies. Rather, fictional media exists in many cases to allow folks to indulge their fantasies without imposing on real people. That's why it sucks when woke creators come in and take something like Cowboy Bebop and decide what fan-favorite aspects are no longer appropriate for the times. They'll make excuses for why they couldn't adapt the aesthetic perfectly, but we know damn well they never intended to do so in the first place. With such a history of censorship and revising old and classically beloved icons, how is that not supposed to piss us off? Another frustrating incident occurred recently when, in Japan, the Chiba police partnered up with the VTuber Rinka Tojo to promote bike safety, and a feminist group suppressed the movement by complaining the avatar was too young and revealing. This is the same crappy attitude that led people to try and cancel the Red Cross for using Uzaki-chan art in their blood drives. It just goes to show that what they think should be a priority in the world is ass backwards. I'm genuinely worried about the future of JRPGs, now that Bandai Namco has recently done a bit of rebranding, committing themselves to a more global demographic. On paper, that sounds lovely, pledging to make their games fun for everyone going forward. Sadly, this type of corporate speak has always been unanimous with overly puritanical values, watering down media even if it's aimed at young adults. It very well could wind up a form of shadow censorship, where a company makes its games satisfy the most sensitive and offended markets first, so that international releases don't spark debates over changed content between regions. It's the kind of censorship that transcends any formal ban and infects the creator's brain so they restrain their ideas from the start. We've seen this with Capcom, which has been aiming for a more international presence ever since the R. Mika butt slap incident. We have leaked documentation that reveals the company has corporate training that very much mimics the feminist rhetoric Anita Sarkeesian popularized. With Resident Evil 4 getting yet another release, Capcom has taken to altering the game's script to remove presumably sexist dialogue spoken by Leon Kennedy. This doesn't concern me as much as the removal of sexy women, but it still sucks seeing companies try to revise their own history for clout. As I've mentioned in other videos, it's okay to have flawed characters who aren't ideal role models. I honestly prefer it to pretending issues of sexism and discrimination just don't exist. Still, I'm most worried about Bandai Namco, since they made great games like God Eater and Code Vein that absolutely nailed their character designs. Their more recent releases, Scarlet Nexus and Tales of Arise, have been far more tame by comparison. It's not so much that I need these games to have sex appeal. But seeing it would definitely assure me that Bandai Namco's commitment to the global market isn't just a delicate way of erasing the designs I love. The ball's in their court. Hashtag free the underboob. The other huge worry about globalization of anime and anime-inspired games comes from China. The West might be woke on issues of diversity, but the Chinese government has its own highly oppressive hold on our media. It's depressing how a HoloLive member can be completely deplatformed just for looking at YouTube analytics mentioning Taiwan. Sometimes we can just be glad that it doesn't affect us, such as censoring Wu Zetian and other scantily clad servants in China's release of Fate Grand Order. It's a miracle they haven't done the same in North America, and I'm very grateful for that. However, we aren't always so lucky. A global commitment might often mean designing media that appeals to the Chinese government, forcing the rest of the world to receive their censored version. The developers of Genshin Impact have certainly struggled with this, as international fans were recently denied special anniversary content because it couldn't be released domestically. It's a lot like how Tokyo Mirage Sessions was released on Switch using its censored North American content, forcing even the Japanese to play an inferior version of their own game. When it comes to anime stuff, China is extremely inconsistent. It's obvious that a lot of anime and game companies very much depend on the revenue made from the Chinese market, but the government has often tried to ban select works or tropes within them. This hasn't stopped games like Genshin Impact from pretty much copying the aesthetic and mechanics of various Japanese properties and achieving vast worldwide success. It's all fun and games until the Chinese government steps in and dictates how these developers make their games. In an ongoing campaign to correct China's youth, the government has ordered companies like Tencent to cease promoting effeminate depictions of men in their properties. In an attempt to suppress liberated gender expression, China's government is censoring media for the exact opposite reasons that the West is, leading some fans to worry that cute femboys like Venti might wind up being written as female characters. Whether this actually comes to fruition, only time will tell. Looking at this, I just want to say that this is the nature of the beast. Censorship is a monster, whether it's being done for or against your cause. Creators are going to have to learn to market themselves independent from China, else they risk complying with the government's every demand. Oh, and don't even get me started with Australia, which has its own vendetta against cute anime girls. Basically, a global commitment is not the wholesome future you might imagine. Just like attractive anime babes aren't some devilish attempt to suppress a woman's autonomy. Rather, creators need to stick to their guns and make what they are truly passionate about. They should be allowed to follow the rule of cool without worrying about who gets offended. These works deserve a platform where they can be enjoyed all around the world in various languages, but they should not aim to appease all demographics at once. This is why, even though I don't watch or read Fire Force, I applaud the attitude of its mangaka, Atsushi Okubo. He's willing to make what he wants, thrive off its success, and tell other people to deal with it if they're offended. That said, what do you think of all of this? Let's discuss it in the comments below.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!